Hi, everyone. Welcome to People's Catholic Seminary Forum #2 on Dialogue, Discernment, and Decisions as a Synodal Church, Next Steps for the Synod in 2024. And the specific topic for part 2 is all disciples, all missionaries. So you are very, very welcome. And now Joan will lead us in an opening prayer.
We are here today in response to the call to participate in the ongoing synodal process to dream and to help create the church we are called to live out in the third millennium. So let us begin with a prayer. Let's center ourselves and become aware of the divine presence within each of us, making us one with each other and one with everyone and everything in the universe. O Holy One, we open our minds and hearts to you as we listen to each other and together discern your voice speaking to us and through us, leading us forward in creating the church we are called to be, in love and service to the world. And together we say, Amen.
So I will begin with some of the highlights from the synthesis report part 2. And then we will switch to a discussion on key questions that Joan will lead us in. And then we'll close out with a summary and an invitation to you for further insight sharing. So here we went through this part 2, all disciples, all missionaries, and pulled out some what we thought were very important insights and highlights for the emerging church, which we believe that we are representing in this particular forum with the different communities around the world. The first insight, of course, is that the church affirms that the church is mission, and that means that we exercise co-responsibility at all levels of the church. Then a big part of this whole section is on women. And they begin with Jesus welcomed women as disciples, and that women are called to co-responsibility at every level of the church's life. Well, for many of us, that is a beautiful insight that needs to be enfleshed in the institutional church. But the emerging church on the edge, on the margins, has been living that for the last 20 plus years in many different ways. Again, in more than one place, the synodal document addresses the issue of clericalism as something that the institution has to really deal with, which is a chauvinist mentality and inappropriate expression of authority as a scar on the face of the church, which all of us have experienced. And they address some points that they need to really focus on in order to address this issue, such as avoid talking about women as a problem and view women as protagonists and not subordinates. So they have been listening to the critique of feminist throughout the last years of theology and spirituality and ecclesial gatherings, saying that we are not the strawberry on the cake, as Francis one time said. We are equal members. So this document, this synodal document, really reflects a listening process by the delegates that they get it. Now, what does it mean by getting it for the future? That's what we, the church, and we are part of this whole process, are helping one another to insightfully leap ahead and work together to create a renewed, transformed ecclesial life as one people in love and justice doing. So one of the questions that they are dealing with in this section and that the institution needs to deal with is how can the church include more women in existing roles and ministries? Well, for us, we know how that would be. For many of us, we have women in ordained ministries because the fullness of our baptismal equality incorporates all the gifts and all the ministries. But they are dealing in this report, in the synthesis report, by raising this question. And then they put out, if new ministries are required, who should discern these? That's a very interesting and important question. Then they actually start dealing with the diaconate. Different positions have been expressed regarding women's access to diaconal ministry. And they say this in the document. This is directly from the document. Some feel it would restore practices of the early church. So that's all the work that Phyllis Agana and so many other theologians have been writing about for the last, 30, 40 years. The whole rediscovery of the early history of women in ministry in the early Christianity. And then, in addition, of course, the other reasons are women are stepping up. They have been serving. 80% of U.S. parishes have had women as leaders in parish ministries. They affirmed that women in the diaconate would be faithful to tradition and would bring new energy to the church. So this is the conversation that they just had in 2023, the synodal delegates in Rome. So they're summarizing this conversation in this report. So the next point is that the need for theological and pastoral research and access of women to the diaconate should be continued. So, people really critiqued this report because of this sentence that why do we need more theological and pastoral research? Going back to the last 2 points, it's already well documented that women did serve in diaconal ministry and that it is a big need. And actually, the honest thing is that women are already serving it right now throughout the entire church doing this work. And in some countries, they're authorized by the bishops to preach, to baptize, because they are without priest ministers. And in some areas of the world, especially in South America, and even in places like Alaska, they have special, quote, permission. They're really doing this work, and there are many other places as well. So to say that they need to do more, this was a critical point of they thought, backtracking and excusing themselves to prolong this discussion. And then the number 13, that the churches are encouraged to listen and care for the most marginalized of women. Very interesting and important point. And when you think of so many women who are leading today from the margins, that would be and women and men and all genders in our communities in an inclusive church find themselves on the margins. So this openness to listen and care for and be part of a co-responsible church with the marginalized could be interpreted as a sign of hope, as a sign of openness. Um, Questions. Now, this is important and has been covered in recent articles and actually over years of articles in the National Catholic Reporter. Questions of labor and justice for women and consecrated life should be addressed. So many nuns have not, and orders are bankrupt today because they did not receive a living wage, and now that their members are needing care, end of life care, and are ill, and there's less in able to do ministries for the church, for the institution, they're out of money. So that is they're dealing with that as an issue of justice, which I think is important. Number 15, well, from PCS's perspective, we're really happy that finally we're realizing that they are noting that it's important to have women as integral members of faculty and formation in ordained ministry. That's there was some hope, I think, in the 80s, maybe early 90s. You had women in seminaries, but then more and more through JP2's reign as Pope, women were less and less significant as faculty, and their voice was really silenced. And when women's ordination got off the table, it became more and more conservative. As everybody knows, seminaries went in a different direction. But if we're to go forward, for the church to adopt all the synodal energy of equality, co-responsibility, and being a church for everyone, there's going to have to be a renewal and a renewed openness to programs that really integrate spirituality, contemporary theology, spirituality for everyone, in order to be a blessing to fruitful ministry in the church. And then number 16, this is just amazing that this is in this document, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of conversation among us about this. Liturgical texts and church documents need to be reflective of and derived from women's experience. That would bring in the whole issue of feminine and other kinds of imagery and personification of the divine that is missing from all of the liturgical texts I've seen that from the official church. And the recent dust up over the baptismal formula, if you don't say the words, I baptize you in the name of, that just came out, is like a backward step from moving forward into a more open, fuller expression of the divine and of spiritual experience for all of us, out of all of our experiences, but especially women's experience, which has been lacking with feminine imagery. And number 17, lay associations, ecclesial movements, and new communities are a sign of the maturation of the co-responsibility of all the baptized. I think that's one of the most important points in this document. And it affirms our movement and our communities and the energy that our ecclesial communities throughout the world and our international movement have brought to the church, that we are a sign of new life, and it's part of the co-responsibility of all the baptized, because that's how we function. All the ministries are raised up as spiritually equal and vibrant. So this, I think, is very, very important. And I think we have a lot to say. Actually, all of this whole section really puts a lot on our plate to feed back to the church, to the larger, wider church, of what it means to live this. They're saying this needs to happen. We've been doing it. We have a lot to say about this, and this is so important that our voices are heard in this conversation. And then again, that the future of synodality is the future of the church. So it looks to circular councils, advisory bodies, and representation among lay associations, ecclesial movements, and that would be us, new communities. So that would bring the emerging church into the heart of the entire church, because you would see it as many circles circulating around with a dynamic energy of spirit among all of us. That is a beautiful vision. And that would be something, if it actually happened and we helped to make it happen by participating, could really, really be a source of renewal, take us to a new place after Vatican II, new energy for actually hope for a future, a new future for the church. And then the discussion about priestly celibacy reopens the whole thing on married priest. It just was one sentence. So, I mean, I think that's going to definitely probably be one thing that's is going to happen. And then this got a lot of press. Deeper study of the theology of the permanent diaconate will shed light on the question. So, it's hard to read what this number 20 really means. Does that mean they're going to try to bring something magic out of the permanent diaconate, which is not the tradition, the earliest tradition of the church, and somehow make a parallel to women in the diaconate? Or does it reflect that they have no idea how to integrate the question of women in the diaconate as a new form of ministry that renews diaconia as service, tender, loving service and care very broadly to the entire church and to the entire church as co-equal and co-responsible? So those are sort of the highlights that I pulled out. And now Joan will pick up with the questions that we're going to focus the rest of our time on discussion with you.
Great. Thank you, Bridget Mary. And I just would like to reiterate that, as Bridget Mary just pointed out, this is the section of the synthesis document where all of us have the most experience of doing for many, many years. And so it's going to be a really big area where we can have a huge impact. So we want to hear from each of you on your experiences. And I'd like to start with question 2 and question 3 to begin with, so that because these are the areas where I think we have the most experience. How have you implemented co-equal roles and co-partnerships in your emerging church communities? And from your lived experience in your emerging church community, how would you describe all aspects of ordained ministries of deacons and priests? I think I read. So as a major part of your experience of creating inclusive church communities, please share the roles and ministries you have developed and implemented for women in your church community. So we welcome your thoughts and comments. Can, can we can't leave the questions up, or do people have access to it on what was sent out?
Well, Joan, we can't see who's speaking and see the questions. So it's one or the other.
Okay, so why don't we start then with question 2? How have you implemented co-equal roles and co-partnerships in your emerging church communities?
And please unmute yourself so we can hear you.
I had revised this question and I don't have it. So
there was a question in the chat. I can type the question up. I have it in front of me in the chat for Andrea and whoever else wants it. I volunteered to do that. This is Suzanne.
Yeah, okay.
You want me to do that, Joan?
Sure. So
I can answer one of those questions. I'm sorry I'm late. I got stuck at the post office. We've had our community going since probably almost over 16 years. It emerged from starting at San Jose State until we got kicked out of there because they wanted to charge us $300 an hour. So we started a house church, and we had a house church going until COVID hit. And then we learned how to get on Zoom. And through the process of all of that, we have grown, but we've also, with the help of the upper room, I have really benefited from them, which I participate in. People participate in the liturgy. It's something they sign up for what readings they want to do. And it isn't just the 3 readings that are, the standard readings, but we implement other readings and the voices. All of the parts of the priest are given to the people. We do the consecration together, and I've had to learn how to import the music, and they, suggest songs. So it's been a wonderful journey of participation, inclusion. I now have, we have people from across the United States, transgender, former Jesuits, sisters of different communities. So it's been a wonderful process throughout the years. Thank you.
thank you.
Magdala Catholic community.
Thank you so much. Anyone else?
This is Mary Teresa. I just want to piggyback on what Juanita said. I think not only do we do all the things that she said, but we also encourage people to speak during a shared homily, which is really wonderful. So ahead of time, we send out the readings. So now they're really going into scripture and really studying scripture more as they're then coming back and taking their thoughts back into the community.
Thank you, Mary Teresa. I forgot that part. We do have that dialogue after the readings, and that has been a real instrumental piece of going deeper into Scripture.
That's anyone else on?
I'm part of the Mary Mother of Jesus community, as is Bridget Mary, and I don't think anybody else is, Cheryl and Jim. But one thing I wanted to add is that, two things. One is that anyone who attends our services is automatically excommunicated. And that's been really a difficult reality for a lot of people because they fear excommunication for a number of reasons, including where they can be buried, believe it or not. So I think that's very important to know. And I think that most of us probably know it, but I just wanted to put emphasis on it. Also, where there are more than one priest, or like Mary Eileen she has a liturgical committee that work together on the liturgies. She has to celebrate liturgy every single week. I think you might have to do that too, Juanita, I'm not sure. Christine, and other people. We have a small group of people and we take turns celebrating the liturgy. And I think the thing that's really good about that is everyone does it a little differently. And I think there's richness in that. It follows the format, but it's done a little bit differently. And I think that has really been important to our community because they've said it several times. So anyhow, that's.
Thank you, Dottie. I noticed that there are a number of people with hands
up. I just realized that. So,
hey, Jonah, are you going to call on them, or do you want me to do that?
I can call on them.
Do it. Okay.
Yes. Thanks. I'm sorry. Katie?
Yes, I was just going to say about the shared homily. I just found 3 wonderful questions, which I'll include when I send the liturgy out tomorrow. So to give the people time, like Mary Teresa was saying about the upper room, to get familiar with the readings, because 2 of the readings will not be from scripture. We'll be using only one, the gospel. So I think anything we can do in the communities when how we gather to help our members or those who attend to reflect on the liturgy, its theme, its readings, and then be able to participate in the shared, and we do the shared homily, I think, as Dottie said. So anything that we can do to have our people respond, I think it's wonderful.
Yes, great. Suzanne?
Just, I want to go to the number 1 right above it. It talks about the Synod affirms that the church is mission. And I want to expand on our notion of mission. It's not just liturgy, gathering in liturgy. What I love about ARCWP is our service is diversified. As some of you know, I've been involved with Hearts Together for Haiti. I've also been involved with brain injury, and that's been welcomed to be able to incorporate spirituality in both of those venues. So I would like to expand on what is meant by service, go beyond the traditional being prepared to give sacraments and being able to develop homilies and liturgy. That's my contribution. And I'm excited about that. I think we're breathing new energy into the church when we really get a handle on the ministry that's being done already.
That's a really great point. Thank you for sharing that. Andrea Grace?
Thanks. As far as I agree with you, and I'm always amazed, especially in ARCWP, how much service people do and the diversity of service that we do. It's just so wonderful to behold. And I think that validating that in our own communities and encouraging that. But as far as the leadership and the co-responsibility, as I'm forming, so we formed a new community that started praying officially in September together. And we have a team, we're hoping to get to 15 people that work together. And so we meet a couple times a month, and they take turns co-creating each of the services with me. So it's really different voices and different perspectives that way. And it provides an opportunity for me to help them grow, to mentor them and nurture them one-on-one as we create these services. Some of the languages come up, we are following accompaniment theology, which I think is so important. But the bigger issue that I see is that the Catholic Church continues to draw such lines of division, which is not what Jesus was about. He says, welcome to all.
Yeah.
And to say that we are we are using inclusive Catholic community, that we are inclusive in the example of Jesus who welcomed all, and that we are in the Catholic tradition, right?
Yes.
And then the other thing that I've been trying to do in each of our masses is to include some type of prayer experience that we might traditionally encounter on a retreat, that provides people an opportunity to engage in prayer and experience prayer in a new way. Because I'm hoping that through those experiences, they will experience God's love and they will be transformed so that they can be a transformational power in our world, wherever God is calling them to serve. I think those are, and together, I'm just another bozo on the bus of our team, right? I'm a servant, and my voice doesn't count any more than anybody else's, unless I really feel God calling us to do something that, and I can explain it and everybody can buy into it. But other than that, the theme for Lent they chose wasn't my favorite, but I'm going with it. So
it's a good example of co-partnership and co-responsibility.
right. Exactly.
So that's great. Thank you very much, Anne. Denise?
Good morning, everyone. It is morning here. I am in Alaska and it's 9 a.m. or a little after 9 a.m. So it is morning. I just wanted to share that it was stated that Alaska has women appointed. Well, for me personally, it was back in 1988. Bishop Michael Kenny, we were losing our priest in the little town of Haines, Alaska, where we lived. And I was doing music. I was a convert. And Bishop Michael came up to me and said, I want you to come to Juneau, which is where he lived. And he said, because I need you and this other woman, Mary, to lead this community, because you're not going to have a priest, but maybe 3 or 4 times a year. And that depended on whether they could fly in or come in by the ferry, because otherwise they'd have to drive all the way through Canada. So we were even limited on priest access because of weather or just transportation. The ferry only comes a couple times a week. So back in 1988, his vision was, women needed to be and were a vital part of the church. That was my call to priesthood. I didn't realize it then, but it was. And he saw that in me, because I said, wait a minute, I'm just a convert. I just do music, but he pulled that from me. And another beautiful thing is that we can do that for others. I'm always aware of calling that forth in others who say, I just do music, or I'm just a convert, because for me, it's been a blessing. Although I was only ordained a few years ago, the road to ordination was long and challenging, but I persevered. And I just wanted to share that this is, it's just, been a beautiful thing, and I'm writing down all these little notes. I'm beginning to form a community up here, so please pray for all of us, and we'll see what windows and doors open. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Denise. Peggy?
Hi, yeah.
Hi.
Well, I've had a home church going since 2018 when after I was ordained, and we do pretty well sharing things. But what I found was, I send out the readings ahead of time so they can reflect on them and all, and I ask for volunteers, and sometimes I get volunteers and sometimes I don't. And then also for the Eucharistic parts, I just quit doing that and we just all say it together. And then instead of asking people, I discovered it's just easier when we get together to say, "Hey, would you da 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 da," after we're gathered, um, and people don't mind. They know that that's just the way it is. And then there's this other community that I'm kind of leading right now that I had gone to Assisi last September with a good friend of mine who's a Franciscan friar, and I can celebrated at all those masses and the beautiful basilicas and everything with him, and it was a wonderful experience. And then 2 weeks after we got back, he passed away, and so the community that he had here in Indianapolis at a place called the Hermitage, I'm going there now to lead the masses there, and it's a very different um, it's a very different than the home masses. And I just go with what they had created, and of course what they're grieving, their loss and all. So I'm not changing anything from what they're used to right now. I sometimes bring a reading from what I pull off of Walk or something, and then that uses the inclusive language, which they appreciate. And when I have time and make space to explain why we're going to use this rather than this reading. And so that has gone very well. And the only other thing I can say is that after we read the readings, I really providing several minutes of silence really seems to help people, give them those few moments for scripture, the readings to flush over them, and for them to be able to respond from internally instead of just in their head. So that's all I have to add. Thank you.
That sounds wonderful. It's so important that you take people from where they are, meet them where they are, and gently lead them forward into some of the new. And that's exactly what you're doing. And that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Peggy. And I'm sorry, I don't see your name and I don't know you.
Jane is next.
I'm
Jane. Oh, okay.
Jane. Okay, my name shows there for me. I'm from Canada, with RCWP, the bishops in serving in that role right now. But I really appreciate all the sharing that is has been exchanged here. From my perspective, I'd like to add just a couple of things. One is we are basically one region all across Canada, and since the pandemic and going to Zoom for providing liturgies, what we have done, and this would be in terms of co-partnering, is that we've among the various communities have agreed on a sort of a rotation schedule so that we provide a Zoom liturgy, that a Zoom liturgy is available every Sunday of the month, but no one has to do them each time. Like, you don't have to serve your own community on Zoom. So for my example, I'm in Regina, Saskatchewan. I do a Zoom liturgy on the second Sunday of the month. I do one in person with my house church community on the fourth Sunday of the month. That Sunday, St. Bridget's in Calgary does the opposite of what I do. So they have an in-person on the second Sunday and Zoom on the fourth Sunday. And another community in Lethbridge and in Sudbury, they do that, so that we're always providing a liturgy on Zoom that people can access to be in connection with the emerging church communities, and of course the dynamism of all of that. And we use breakout rooms for sharing on the scriptures in those breakout rooms. And so we have created a network across the country of people who are the emerging church has become a national and international, because we have people from countries around the world that have become part of our expression of faith and community and of service, because then we piggyback onto one another's service projects too, in terms of, for example, supporting 2 Afghan women lawyers who have emigrated to Canada, fled to Canada actually, because of the persecution of Afghan women. And that's just an example. One other thing that we have been doing is the First Nations version of the New Testament. Some of you may be familiar with that we have been using that as another alternative to how the readings are proclaimed. And that's been really important for us because of our national efforts at truth and reconciliation. So for us to use that as another way of connecting with the Indigenous community, who are becoming more and more part of our individual communities. So wow, that's my sharing today.
Sounds fabulous and very creative and wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome,
Jane. So I don't see any other hands raised.
Paula's next.
Paula's had it.
Okay, much of what I want to share really will be so brief in that it revoices what other people have said. The idea of first of all, of using the inclusive language. My liturgy, I preside in Cincinnati, Ohio, but since COVID, we've been celebrating our liturgy on Zoom, which has called forth people from other, as you've all probably experienced, other states as well as other countries. And I would say most of the people come because of the inclusiveness and the language. Most of the people who come to our liturgies have been very deeply Catholic and want to move the Catholic Church forward, and are finding it difficult doing that in their parishes, in their home parishes. Some continue to go to that, but need to be fed that they're feeling they're not getting. And that's what our liturgy seem to bring to them. And so many of them are active in services, various services. And so the great thing about having this on Zoom is that we are able to support each other in those services. We've done in-person services and other letter writing, other kinds of things because of being connected through that great calling. And I do want to mention that the shared homily has been such a blessing for all of us, because we get to know each other better, and we can get a different insight into the scripture from someone else. Just a couple weeks ago, there was a reading of Paul that one of our members found very difficult to understand, thinking he was asking too much of us, and other people read that in a totally different way and were able to share it with all of us. And it helped that one particular person very much, because she never thought it that way. And so it's been really a blessing to have the voices of so many people sharing and taking ownership of what the readings say. So I'm just mostly affirming what other people said. It's been very good. And one other thing is calling forth leadership in other people. Some people who might have been more shy and feel, I don't know what I have to offer, but yet in getting to know each other, we can call them forth, and they've been delighted to take part in some of the leadership. So that's it.
So we have two hands up, and if we could let the people have
I can.
voice, if you haven't spoken yet, if they could go first, and then we'll call on the others. So Christina would be next, and then we'll come back to you, Andrea Grace.
Hi, I'm so happy to hear everyone because it sounds very well for me. I'm Christina from Spain and France, here in Europe for ARCW. For me, it's very important to speak about partnership in leadership because my experience was so beautiful when I begin to learn how to celebrate and be in community from the altar, from the other side of the altar, because I discovered a very nice way of dialogue between the two priests, my husband and I. So we are just like a small family of priests and all the community. And it means clericalism remains impossible to have there because clericalism is a fruit of the fact that we have just one man, Superman, very clever man, the man who knows all and teaches others. And now what we have is a community who can share everything in equal level. I love very much when, for instance, my husband is not agree with me, and he says it. Oh, Christina, I'm not agree. Oh, so we discuss, and people look at us just like, oh my God. But it's very nice because it makes life, true life, actual life, come into community and make the celebration just natural and very funny sometimes, but like family life.
It sounds very
one
real.
of the things. Yes, I hope you understand me.
Yes.
Thank you to hear me.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you. Andrea Grace. Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't seeing hands raised, and now I do see them. So I don't. Is it Jane? I'm not sure.
Go to Shelley, and
Shelley.
then
Yes.
we just want to give everybody at least one round to talk
Yes.
first before we go back to a second.
Much of what you have, much of what you have shared is similar to the Heart of God community that I'm with. And more, we are presiding together. And I'm resonating with what Christine just said about disagreeing, because we sometimes often, it seems that well, we do other readings too, but we do comment on the lectionary, and it seems often that for me sometimes, I guess the most, they don't hang together, and so we will talk about our opinions and really listen to each other, and the forum is one that is so open and supportive and feeds back and picks up on the comment just before, and we always come away with a feeling of being fed from each other, and it becomes a real holy experience because the openness is encouraged, and as someone else said, we also take a lot of time before we launch into the shared homily. So I think trusting, there's a big trust factor, and inviting that and inviting spirit really makes for it's powerful, it's practical, and we have learned to love each other And we have a woman from Syria who so much wants to be a priest. It's so hard, but she joins us every week, and she's growing and sharing and learning English. And so it's just impossible. I mean, it's the most kind of energetic and heartfelt time. Very alive. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Shelley. Mary Eileen.
Thank you. I just wanted to add one little element here. There was a time where my presiding at the local liturgy was shared by other priests. And then all of a sudden one day I found that I was the only one left. And I figured that this is not good. So I decided to ask the people that were gathered around if they'd be willing to learn how to plan a liturgy and compose a homily. And I really got a good number that did want to do that. And because I was already teaching at the People's Catholic Seminary, these courses, it was easy for me to share that with my community. So we did form a committee, but it wasn't because the committee is hierarchical. It was the work of the people, and the people who wanted to do that work joined the committee. It's an open committee, so anybody can join. And so everybody signs up and presents a draft, because it's not their liturgy, it's the people's liturgy. And they bring the people's liturgy to the committee, and we look it over and we talk and discuss, and then we decide that we're making the best of this liturgy amongst all of us gathered. And that's how it forms. And there are people also, like everybody else was saying, there's voices. The Eucharistic prayer is divided into voices, and people sign up. They don't sign up, they're asked at the time. It's easier that way, actually. And even the readers, but the liturgy goes out a couple of days ahead of time. So everybody has it. And so if they really want to get involved, they will. But I found this education piece to give confidence to the people, not to divide them as to who knows and who doesn't, but to give confidence to the people. And they're getting better and better at it, I mean, I can actually take a vacation for 2 weeks. This is great, but it's forming a community of equals. And you can't be equal if you don't know what you're doing. I mean, it's just something that you have to put in there as part of the thread of building that community. And I have to tell you, I believe our community is a success story that way. And I am not the prominent voice, believe me. I'm the last one to speak. If I have to speak, I will. But they are doing very well, and I'm real proud of them. And I really believe in that education piece, being open to everybody for that experience, so they build up their confidence and feel empowered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Eileen. Thank you. Is it Jane Audrey?
Yeah. Yes, it's Jane. Hi. I just want to echo that and just give a comment to Andrea Grace, who in just a few short months has done that so well with our community. In fact, even at her ordination, she had people from our beloved Christ Alive community just working with her, even at the very beginning, to incorporate and to see the growth of people has been just amazing. How people are so confident and willing to share and be a part of that. And it's empowering. And I think empowering is so important. And just one thing that I picked up on those notes that you were given, that celibacy was being considered. Female diaconate was being researched. So there's like a hierarchy there between what's happening and what's, and what's sort of happening. But in the inclusive community, such as I've been experiencing, I mean, in which everybody is equal and we all share so much. And Andrea Grace insists we won't have the liturgy unless there's somebody doing it with her. So it's very important she does that.
That's great. Thank you so much. I mean, this was such a rich part of our discussion, and we'll have a great deal to put into our final report and hopefully make a big impact on what is going to be considered in October of 2024. Oh, I'm sorry, Andrea Grace. I didn't see your hand there.
I'd put it down so other people could share.
Oh, okay, good.
Thank you for sharing your experience of our community. But just today, I was reading, actually, it was Jane who pointed out in a class this morning that Elizabeth Johnson says in her book, Creation and the Cross, the way a community prays reveals what it believes. That's on page 57 of Creation and the Cross. The way a community prays reveals what it believes.
Yeah.
I think that the church as an institution has a responsibility to revisit our wording, right, for the prayers. And that's one of the big pieces of feedback I've gotten over and over is that the words that we say are understandable and portray a loving, benevolent God who's companioning us. Yeah. And so it's important, I think, for the images that we're using, right, of the Holy One. And then the second thing, we've talked about leadership and participation that way, but I've been very intentional about creating as many opportunities in our community as I can. So inviting someone to be the greeter, inviting someone to bake the bread, inviting someone to handle some of the technical stuff, and just trying to diversify as much as we can, building on people's talents and inviting them to do a little bit. And when I see that they're doing a little bit and they're getting more involved, then it's an opportunity to bring them further into but I think that that's a really important notion that I don't always see in our institutional churches.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Johnny, just one thing. We have a church without walls now. We used to celebrate in obviously not a Catholic church, in a UCC church. Once COVID started and we got people from all over the country, we decided to stay with our church without walls, meaning we have liturgy on Zoom. The other thing we do, though, that's really very important to our community is that we meet together for a meal. And it allows us to, the people, especially from this area, who want to see one another and really miss being in person for liturgy, but are very respectful to the fact that they don't want to now not include people. We've kept the style of liturgy, but they get to still meet together. And it's really a very important piece, and it's pretty incredible that's over a meal. And so I think it's important to meet with people outside of the liturgical experience, your community, so that there's a different kind of sharing, I guess.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dottie. Thanks for reminding us of that. It's really a very important piece of the Mary, Mother of Jesus community experience. So thank you. So we're getting near the end of our time together, but there are a couple of questions that you might want to respond to. In the highlights presented, which Bridget Mary spoke to, what spoke to you most powerfully? Or what inspires and energizes you the most in moving forward in the synodal process, in the synodal process of change in the church? So what one of the highlights spoke most powerfully to you, or what energizes you most in moving forward in this process? Mary Eileen?
Thank you. Just recently, I have met with some local communities that are also on the inner edge of the outer circle. And we are going to meet on Pentecost, actually the Saturday before. And we're going to talk about synodality because we're all in the Catholic tradition, but we're all doing a different little thing. Okay, so if you go to this one, it's going to have an emphasis here. Another one's going to have an emphasis there. Bridget Community has what it has. So, but what we want to do is we want to create avenues that we have in common and that we can support one another with. We don't care what the report says from Rome. I mean, we do, but I mean, it's on the ground. It's what we can do together as the synodal communities, reaching out to one another. I know we're not welcomed by the church. Our voices aren't welcome. So let's create our own and see how it goes amongst the Catholic tradition churches that have formed around here. And so I ask you for your prayers so that happens. I think Pentecost is a great day to meet because of all the different gifts of the Spirit. So, but that's what's going on here, and that's what's important to us. Thank you.
That's great. And you're carrying on the synodal process, which is what Francis is asking us to continue to do going forward in the years to come. So anyone else have any comment or reflection? If not, oh, good. Denise.
I just one more quick note. It still amazes me how many people have not heard of Roman Catholic women priests, and that our voices, you know, prophetic as they are still, oh, I didn't know there were women priests, or, you know, so just continuing that message. I know you all do it and we all do it together, but just to remember, many people have not even heard of us, or that it's even a remote possibility. That's all.
Thank you. Well, I think that Bridget Mary can speak to some exciting ways that that's going to happen as we move into the next synodal meeting in Rome. So, Bridget Mary?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone. What a fabulous meeting. And I look forward to the recording of this. We're going to put all of your insights into a report. We are going to share it with the Vatican. We're going to share it with any synodal delegate we can get our hands on. And we have some wonderful opportunities going forward because we have an ordination planned in October on the Tiber, from the Danube 7 to the Tiber 7. That's what it's looking like in October 17th. So it's a phenomenal moment for prophetic witness for us. It's like the full circle. As the Synod will be meeting in Rome, we will be ordaining. And I think now is the time for our voices and our community's voices. That's the real important thing, is the ripple effect that we are giving forth in these inclusive, dynamic communities on the edge, but very much in the heart of Jesus, all embracing inclusive love. So there's so much that we shared in common today and such great diversity. So we are grateful for your voices. We're grateful for our process. And we will have one more session of this forum, and it'll be on part 3 of the synodal document on March 12th at 1 p.m. Again, you'll have a Zoom link. It's open to anyone. The recordings are available for all 3, and all 3 forums. We will also put all 3 forums, and your continued input you can send to us. If you have more to add to our report, if you have more insights, we want to incorporate your voices and the community's voices. So as much material as you can send us, we will put in our report, and encourage you to make your own reports wherever you are as well. And you can use our resources as well for further work with your communities. Peggy, I noticed you have your hand up. Would you like
Real
to?
quick, I was going to comment on a couple of those things that you showed. I'll be darned if I can remember what they were. So can you send out the PowerPoint with all that so that I can reflect on them again?
Yes, we will send you the link to the PowerPoint, and for each program, you will have that. It's going to be available in the blog, the forum, the PCS forum blog, and we'll send this specific one to you, as well as this recording will be on there as soon as we process it.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
You have total permission to use everything that we are giving you in this because you are the contributors, and it's all our voices that are important. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye. How do we leave?